Stage 31 review, starting off with your subjunctive forms. For our present system, we have the present active infinitive plus an ending, and that's going to give us an imperfect subjunctive. So you see here I've used amare. I've added a personal ending, the T, to give me amaret, and that is an imperfect subjunctive. Using those infinitives, present active infinitives is going to be an imperfect subjunctive every time. Perfect system, we have the perfect active infinitive, which is going to give us the pluperfect subjunctive. So if I take amawi and I add that isse, amawisi, then I give it a personal ending, it gives me amawisit. And from there I have the pluperfect subjunctive. Here's a list of the subjunctives, one for each of the conjugations. The imperfect subjunctive, amaret, doceret, ducaret, leniret. Pluperfect, amawisit, docuisit. Okay, now docuisit is spelled properly. You have duxisit and winisit. These are our pluperfects. You're going to have to deal with using the ablative. There are several ways to use the ablative. You have the ablative of means. That's you're going to use the ablative when you're trying to determine what was used to perform the action. You have the ablative of manner, which is the manner in which the action was performed. You have the ablative of time, which is the exact time that the action was performed. Ablative of place, where the action took place, the exact spot. Ablative of agents, that's who did the action in a passive voice construction. You have the ablative absolute. That is a special participle construction. For the ablative of place and agent, you will get a preposition. For the others, you will not. So in this case, I have the girl was chastised, or was being chastised, or was being insulted. So if I'm asking you with what she was being insulted, I guess that you could use some kind of an object. For example, in this case, if I want to tell you the means that she was chastised, I would say with a great voice, or with a loud voice, and that is what she was chastised with. So that would be an ablative of means. Here I have the girl was chastised with great anger. In this case, it's telling me the manner or the emotion which is being used with the action. So magnawira would be an ablative of manner. If I want to know when something happened, I'm also going to use the ablative. Make sure that you don't use the accusative, because the accusative would tell me for how long. I want to know when exactly, so I would use a word like nocte. So if I say, in this case, it would be the girl was chastised at night. If I use noctem, if I use the accusative, it would be the girl was chastised through the night. If I want to know where something happened, I can obviously use an adverb, but if I want to use a noun to tell you where something happened, I would also use the ablative. Typically, whenever I'm using a place, I will get a preposition with it. In this case, we're going to say that the ablative of place is going to be in-house. The girl was chastised in-house. If I want to tell you with the passive voice construction, I have to have a passive voice verb. If I want to use or tell you who is doing the action, I would use the ablative of agent. In this case, apuero is doing the action, which is the chastising. The girl is chastised by the boy. If I want to tell you who is doing the action in that passive construction, I use the ablative of. If I want to use the ablative in a special participle construction, the ablative absolute, I can do that as well. Typically, that just means that it has some kind of relationship, not an undefined relationship with the rest of the sentence. So, okay, so the ablative of agent here, the construction I'm going to use is the ship having been taken away. So the girl, the ship having been taken away, was chastised, or was being chastised. This is a special participle construction. There are other ways to say that, but this is what we call the ablative absolute. So here's a list of the ablatives that you need to be aware of for your exam. Ablative means, ablative manner, time, place, agent, and absolute. And I gave you an example of each one. Ablative of means, the object that is used. So the girl was being chastised with a loud voice. Ablative of manner, with what emotion. The girl is being chastised with great anger. Time, that's going to tell me exactly when it happened. The girl is being chastised at night. Place tells me where it happened. The girl is being chastised in the house. Agent tells me who did the action in this particular passive voice construction. If I were to use the active, I would not have an agent. So the girl was being chastised by the boy. And then the absolute is being used special participle construction because there's no other way for me to use a participle by attaching it to another noun in the sentence. And in this case, the girl, the ship having been sent away or lost or stolen, was being chastised. Make sure that you guys have a good picture of this. Identifying cases of EC and ID. You have a couple of examples of these that are going to be throughout the translation that you have. Make sure that you peek at this construction. Don't think that it's going to be necessary for you to memorize too much. Remember that the genitive has an IUS, the dative has an I for the singulars. Other than that, it pretty much follows what you would expect for first, second, and third declension endings. Or there is no third declension endings, it's all first and second declension endings. The next thing that we have is subjunctive clauses. You're going to have an indirect command, purpose clause, result clause, indirect questions, cum clause, relative purpose clauses, ubi purpose clauses. Those are subjunctives that we have used up until this point. So for an indirect command, you're going to have some kind of ordering word or requesting word plus ut if it's positive, nay if it's negative, and then the subjunctive. For the purpose clause, you're going to have ut or nay plus the subjunctive. Result, you're going to have some kind of so word. It can be something like tantus, so large. It can be something like ita, so, or itaque, anything that has so in it, plus ut. The negative form of a result clause will have ut non, and then the subjunctive. Indirect question is going to have some sort of mental action or questioning word, or questioning verb, plus a question word, plus a subjunctive. Cum clause is going to have cum plus the subjunctive. Relative purpose clause is going to have a relative pronoun plus the subjunctive. And then an ubi purpose clause is going to have ubi plus the subjunctive. The key to all of these is seeing the subjunctive. Once you see the subjunctive, then you can go back and you can look at how it's being constructed. Okay, cultural terms. You have an emporia, which is a group of markets, riverside markets. Horea, those are going to be warehouses. Subura, that's that area around the river. It's very noisy, it's very crowded, it's very dirty. Ostia, that's the river port. Rostrum, that would be the prow of a ship. Here we have, next one, Campus Martius. Originally that was a massive field that was designed to allow the army to train and work on maneuvers. Here in this part of Rome, it's going to be dedicated to like park areas, like a Central Park in New York. Circus Maximus is a massive NASCAR racing facility. Their NASCARs were also called chariots, so chariot races in the Circus Maximus. Cloaca Maxima, that is the sewer. So basically it took all of the nasty stuff that people have after they eat and put it into the river. Flavian Amphitheater, that would be the massive amphitheater, kind of the Yankee Stadium in Rome, where all the gladiators would go and fight. Temple of Asclepius would be kind of like an ancient hospital. It would be where people would go to receive medical help, what they did have, or even pray to Asclepius, who is the goddess of god of medicine. In a patron-client system, you have the imperator, was the emperor. Of course, he would not have any patrons. He is the patron of all. He would have clients, and those clients would probably be patrons as well. So patrons would be clients to some, and clients could be patrons to others. A client is somebody who, it would be somebody who basically performs political favors for his patron, and in return he would receive some kind of token of appreciation, sometimes money, sometimes gifts, freedoms, other things that he would receive from his patron as a reward for his loyalty. Terms for the Roman caste system. You would have senator, equestrian, plebeian, censor, and quaestor. A senator could be a senator if he had like $1 million. He had to have like $1 million sesterces. Equestrian, he had to have like 400 grand before he could be considered an equestrian. Now, it didn't mean he was going to be an equestrian because he had 400,000 sesterces, but that was one of the qualifications. Plebeian, that guy's the one who's going to be working in the gutters. He basically has to work in the lowest of the low, has very poor conditions, etc. Censor, that's the guy who kept track of who was a senator and who was not a senator. A quaestor would have been a kind of a financial position in ancient Rome. You're also going to have a description of the life and duties of the emperor, senatorial class, equestrian class, and plebeians. They're going to give you a list of duties, and you're going to have to attribute that duty to the emperor, or to a senatorial class, or to the equestrian class, or to the plebeians. For example, if I said works in poor conditions, you would say plebeians. If I said rules the entire empire, you would say the emperor. If I would say, for example, in charge of the governorship of Egypt, you would say the equestrian class. And I'm pretty sure that's the only governorship that they could have would be Egypt. If I said responsible for the governorship of Gaul, you would say the senatorial class. So those are the kind of duties that you're going to get on your test, so make sure that you read over them. Some of the duties on the test that you have for description of the life and duties of emperor, senatorial class, equestrian class, and plebeians are pretty straightforward. Other ones, for example, which of these guys is going to be responsible for taking care of the consulship? Which of these is going to inherit a position? Which of them is going to be given their position by the emperor? Who would be allowed to serve as priests? Who would be allowed to serve as governors? Of what places? Other than that, they're pretty straightforward. So read over those, and especially the ones I just mentioned. Make sure that you're in good shape. How did the patrons treat their clients? Well, kind of interesting. The patrons, a lot of times, especially if you're talking about extremely wealthy patrons, that are the patrons that were dealing with some of the poor clients, they would invite them to dinner. The interesting thing about this is they would cheap out on them. You know, instead of buying ham, they would buy the Spam. Instead of buying wine from the wine store, they would go buy wine in a box. They wanted to make the clients feel like they were being treated like normal, higher class Roman society, but they were not treating them that way. They were buying them McDonald's and swearing up and down that it was Jamil's. So, what duties would a client perform for their patron? Duties would a client perform for their patron would be voting for them, going with them to speeches, going to listen to them read their poetry, whatever. They just had to support them socially. Usually these duties were not, they were kind of mundane and very easy to do. In response to this, the patron would represent them if they had some kind of legal issues. They would protect them from other people that were trying to take advantage of them. What benefit did each receive from the other? Well, obviously this is a benefit to both of them. The patron would give the client money, he would give him food, he would give him legal counsel, he would basically protect him from places and things that he couldn't protect himself from. And in response to that, the client would vote for him, would support him socially in every way that he could. What was salutatio? That's the beginning of the day for the patron. The patron would sit down and a greeting in the morning by all of his clients. The clients would ask him, hey, what should I be doing for you today? And he would tell them, he'd throw some money at them, give them some food, give them a basket, whatever he was going to give them, he would make sure that they knew what their duties were for that day. What was a sportula? Or sportula, it would be a basket was usually filled with a bunch of things that the client needed. Money, food, etc. Characters from the story that you're going to have to identify descriptions for. Haterus, Aurelius, Euphrosyne, QH, Chrysogonus, Pryco, Who were these people? How would you describe them? Haderus is, of course, the patron in this particular chapter. He has patrons as well, but he's a patron of a particular chapter. He doesn't really make an appearance. Euryalus, remember, he's the guy who knows what elegance is, and he's the expert in what's in and what's out. And so he actually writes a letter and has QH Chrysogonus send Euphrosyne to Haderus. Pryco is the herald. Who said what? You have two different sections of who said what. One of them is going to have Puella the Greek girl, the Pryco, the herald, and the Servus, slave. Who did what? Cleanthes, Euryalus, Haderus, Pryco, and Servus are going to give you a description of what somebody did, and you're going to have to match that up with their Latin vocabulary. Ingestis, vincere, post, latus, cleanse, nusquam, ubique, anti, solera, patronus. You're going to have some antonyms here. You're also going to have sentences that are using these. So make sure that you go through there and you're able to know what each one of those words means. For example, angustus is narrow, vincere is to conquer. You do the rest. Here are your word study. Extemporaneous, that's kind of like off the cuff. Desperation, fairly obvious. Ubiquity is surrounding things that is everywhere. Contemporary, that's, if I say something is contemporary, it is of the same time that I am. Mores, that's your customs. Within a society, that's their mores, their customs. Antecedent, something that happens before, it comes before. Publicized is to make known. Fraudulent, obvious fraud. Refectory, that's where I would go to eat. And vehicle, that's something that gets me around. Good luck, Chapter 31 test.